Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about episode 2 of Titans. Well, season 3, episode 2 specifically. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So obviously, we've got a whole bunch of criminals brought together being like, oh, I thought you called us. Why would I call us? It's like, yeah, so, words going around that Batman, bashed Joker's head in one swing, interestingly enough, and split his head in two, was spilling out like soup. Such a very descriptive analogy. And it's like, Batman doesn't kill. It's like, he didn't used to, now he does. So it's like, okay. But then Red Hood makes his appearance, which, once again, I think I've brought this up before. I don't think I talked about it as much in the premiere, but I don't know anything about the Red Hood storyline, no bits and pieces. I knew it was, spoilers, Jason, I already knew that. But other than that, I don't know the storyline. I knew he played, an anti-hero in the sense that, he kind of, is crossing streams into, Marvel, but, he's kind of like Punisher. It's kind of my thought process, oh, he's not afraid to go where Batman couldn't. Oh, Batman's afraid to kill people? I won't. I'll put people down if I need to. So that's what I thought, I thought he's, the anti-hero equivalent of the Bat family. I won't cross that. I'll cross the line that none of them will. But it seems like, no, he's actually taking advantage of the criminal thing. I was like, oh, I didn't know you were straight up a criminal. Maybe you shift over to being an anti-hero later on, but just initially, I guess that sort of teen angst got the best of you, and you're just like, fuck Gotham. I'm gonna get mine. I'm gonna get what's mine. And so, maybe it has something to do with whatever it was he was concocting. Maybe it has some adverse effects after he quote unquote died. I don't know. Once again, like I said, I'm that ignorant to why he picked up the Red Hood, what this whole thing is about, But yeah, he's basically oh, I'm gonna basically make sure everyone gets paid, but basically the city's not Batman's anymore. It's mine. I retired him or whatever, which is so interesting for you to say considering you didn't really do diddly squat. Batman kind of left on his own. But it's I guess it's you gotta build up your legend, that myth of yeah, I'm the reason why Batman, I've retired Batman. I guess it was more so in the sense of not I interfere, but it's more now the city's mine. Batman kind of ran things for a while, criminals struck in fear. It's no, criminal needs to be afraid of me, but I'm gonna help kind of run things now. So, it's yeah, all of these people, oh, check that bag. Yeah, those are all your second in commands. I chopped their heads off. It's Jesus Christ, dude. So immediately coming in with some impact, and just everyone just kind of surrendering. It's oh, guess you're the boss now. So Dick gets brought in by Barbara. I wonder, does that V know a lot? Because she was oh, hey, he's hi, I'm Dick Grayson, and she's yeah, I know, weird time for a reunion. And I'm does she know how deep the Bat family goes, or is it just she knows Dick and Barbara's history in the sense of them on a personal level? Right, you being here isn't a good thing. I wonder, does it have anything to do with the whole shenanigans he pulled last season? I wonder if there's some remark of yeah, you kind of went off the deep end last season, didn't you, kid? So I'm not letting you anywhere near Barbara, but Barbara's it's cool. So obviously breaking him in on the Red Hood case, because there's a woman who's just kind of out of nowhere, and who planted a bomb and blew it up, and she's wearing a red hood while she was doing it. And I was because he's oh, that was Joker's thing, which was oh, I didn't realize that was a Joker thing. But then I was I do vaguely remember that. I want to say it was in Batman the Brave and the Bold. I sadly never watched a lot of it. I saw some here and there, but I want to say Joker pops up in the Red Hood in that. I want to say it was almost it's a rectangular, almost Mysterio helmet, and he was wearing a legitimate tuxedo and stuff and a red cape, if I remember correctly. I could be completely remembering this wrong, because obviously Batman in the Bold was years ago, but I'm I vaguely feel I remember that being a thing. So I don't know if that's tied to do, but it's yeah, before Joker became Joker, he did the whole Red Hood thing apparently. I was oh, that's, so I feel I vaguely have a notion of it, but Batman in the Brave and the Bold is the only thing I can think of that featured that whole shtick about Joker. I don't know if I've never watched a lot of stuff that's ever delved into, at least not that I'm aware of. But so she wants to talk to Nightwing specifically, which is interesting. Which I love that too. The Titans get brought in town, and it's the Titans have this big oh my god, the Titans have come to it's yeah, they're legitimately superhero celebrities, because it makes you, because we know the Justice League exists in this continuity. Well, at least it's believed to exist in this continuity. So it's I guess it's like any superhero team that's on the rising and stuff. It's like, yeah, like you take notice when like the heavy hitters come to Gotham. Like, I mean, I guess any, Gotham would take notice anyway. I did like that line from Dick when they did show it where he was like, oh yeah, like this town is dangerous. Like dangerous not just for everyone else, for people like us. And obviously, you see like Connor and Gar looking at Jason's suit with blood on it, but it's like, yeah, like this isn't just your ordinary town. Like this is like the weird, like the straight villains come from here, and it's like heroes like us got in this type of town. So always be vigilant, be prepared, because this is a breed of criminal we've never gone toe to toe with. Like Gotham is like the special place in the DC universe. Is like, like Metropolis has its bad guys, Central City, Key City had their bad guys. I don't think any place in, like, because Gotham is just the most, like, Gotham. Like, I don't think there's any other city in the DC universe. And I could be wrong. I just feel like there's no other city that has the reputation and just kind of like the, probably like, super villain per capita that Gotham does. Whatever the case may be, the murder rate's got to be massive in that city. I mean, the DC universe is going to be a high rate of murder rate, but I'm sure, like, Gotham in particular, because it's just like, that's the dark city of the DC universe. I feel like I said, I could be wrong, but it's just interesting when you think about that. I mean, that's the only place that could birth heroes like Batman and Robin and give birth to something like, Red Hood as well. But nevertheless, Dick had dressed up, I say dressed up, but he suited up as Nightwing to talk to her, but she couldn't really talk. I guess because, like, if she spilled too much information, then she'd die. But basically, there's a number on her arm. It's like the moment it was dialed, it activated, like, the pump that was inside of her arm that basically started pumping that drug into her, and it started killing her to the point she's like, make it stop. Snapped her own neck just to make it stop. So that's rough, because obviously she was a victim in all of this. Like her 7-year-old, it's like, yeah, her 7-year-old hadn't been found at the time, but it's not till afterwards, and Dick's like, yeah, she must have been, thought her child was in danger, so that's why, like, because he's looking at the, like, footage from, like, when she planted the bomb and stuff, but it was like, yeah, it was like fear in her eyes. She didn't want to do what she was doing, she was forced to. Before that, Dick had looked at a picture of, like, Barbara and her dad, which also answers a question I had last episode, wondering, like, in this continuity, it's like, okay, because I don't know, because I'm sure most continuities, like, Jim is still around when she becomes Batgirl. You know what also didn't cross my mind to think about? It's like, right, we got Batgirl. Interesting enough, like, new seasons introducing Batgirl, well, Barbara Gordon, because we got Barbara in season 2 of the Harley Quinn show, and obviously we're getting her, we got her in this, so I was just like, I didn't think about that until just now. I was like, oh yeah, like, I can't let that slip my mind. Like, yeah, she already got introduced and became Batgirl in that continuity. But I'm also thinking randomly in the back of my head is like, would technically Harley Quinn fall under the multiverse? Like, does that technically exist on, like, Earth 35? I was literally about to say 39, but I was like, no, that's Supergirl's Earth. Well, formerly Supergirl's Earth, because now it's Earth 1. Regardless, it just started getting on my mind. I'm like, oh, what some of the animated stuff kind of technically could fall into some of the multiverse stuff in particular, but that just kind of randomly crossed my mind. They probably won't acknowledge it, but it's just kind of fun to think about, like, oh yeah, it's on Earth, like I said, 39. I mean, well, 35. Regardless, I went on a tangent. But my point was, like, I was wondering whether she became Batgirl post her dad dying before. It's like, yeah, she was already, like, her run-in with the Joker, it seems like already happened in this continuity, like, before her dad died. So it's like, well, after the fact. She had already, like, hung up the cape and just wanted to help in other ways. I wonder, they haven't really talked about it, but I wonder, did she ever become Oracle in this continuity, or is this going to be the thing that pushes her to become Oracle in this continuity? That conversation, I didn't even think about bringing that conversation up, because I just assumed, like, already put up the cowl that she immediately went to being Oracle, but it's like, no, she probably just, like, when she put up the cape, she probably backed away from this superhero thing, getting together, and just, following her dad's footstep and went more down the law enforcement route. I mean, once again, it's just interesting, like, Dick ended up doing the same thing as well. But we also, interestingly enough, hear from Hank that, like, oh, there was a Barbara and Dick thing, which I'm like, I guess that once again, it's like, I'm not well versed in the comics enough to know that maybe that has been a thing that's happened from time to time or something, but it's like, yeah, I mean, it's not like your siblings or anything, so it's not as weird, but it's like, you spend enough time with someone, of course things are going to happen, but it's like, it is also weird, because it's like, well, you actually break it down, like, it's like, Dick has slept with a lot of the women he's worked with. I mean, like I said, I guess it's just a line of work, but it's like, him and Dawn, him and Corey, him and Barbara. It's like, oh, that's interesting. I don't think there was ever a him and Donna thing though. She might be the only person, but everyone else he slept with apparently. Well, we don't know how. It seems like they were in a legit relationship, at least the way like Hank was kind of pointing it out. But regardless, obviously the conversation circling back, I went on my huge tangent and everything is, okay, so what does this mad person like want? You know, it's sowing chaos, whatever, like any other terrorist. But it's like, Barbara's like, yeah, we got someone we work with, a profiler. You're not going to be happy about it. She's like, I promise you, Dick, you are really not going to like it. It's like, who is it? It's Scarecrow. No. Bruce locked him up in Arkham for, it's like, yeah, he might be a sociopath, but man, there's no one that's able to get into the psyche of people better. You know, even it, I guess, like, it takes someone criminally insane to fully understand the criminally insane. It's also interesting to know that it was Bruce's idea. It's like, oh, really? That's interesting. But it's like, all right, let me set you up with a meeting. Now, what I also think is interesting is like he got his own section. He's got his own wing of Arkham. Not really wing, but like a hallway. Because it's like, yeah, which cell is it? It's like in one at the end. He's literally the only one here. So there are all these other empty cells. I guess it's like, oh, I guess he's such a like master manipulator. It's like, keep him away from everyone. Maybe they've had issues with him getting inside of other people's heads or something like that. But because I was curious based on the trailer that he was like, oh, Dick Grayson. I was like, okay. So my thought was like, does he know about their identities and stuff like that? But it's like, no, like Barbara had called ahead. And it's so weird when he's like, oh, Barb. And he just shorthanded. It's like, oh, not Commissioner Gordon. It's like, nah, Barb. Like we're on a first name basis. It's like, oh, that's not good. But it's like, I guess he worked enough with him. And it's also like, oh, got to get me some weed. He's like, get me this and that. But he's like, I'm not a name brand whore. Get me something close around that. And he's like, I got your weed for you. He's like, oh, thanks. Love you, brother. Love you. And it's like, it's so weird because you would not expect that to be Scarecrow. But I mean, it's like different interpretations because this is a Scarecrow that's been locked up for a couple years. It's like, oh, I'm so smart. My brain is constantly like firing off that I need like weed to slow me down. So he's kind of just saying like, he ended up being the one to piece it together. Like, oh, this is the opening bird opening, that this is like a chess move because the message saying like, oh, I want to meet Nightwing, contact Nightwing was because even the question was like, why Nightwing in particular? And it's like, oh yeah, can you believe poor Batman? You went on a little bit of a murdering spree, but the next day they already forgotten you, moved on to someone else. But he's also like, whoever did this has a little bit of jealousy, which I'm like, I guess it kind of, once again, just like, I'm sure a lot of people, I mean, I'm curious like how many people went into this not knowing that Jason was going to be Red Hood. I'm legitimately curious how many people didn't know that. I mean, it's not like I said, I'm not well versed, but it's one of those comic things that like you pick up over the years. Like I remember reading up on the Jason thing years ago and finding out about the Red Hood thing, but like I said, I didn't know like all the specifics. I just remember, yeah, Joker like beating him to death, and I was like, oh, that was one of my first instances of like, oh, comics are wild. You kind of think just because of superhero stuff, and then you find out about stuff like that, and you're like, oh, I brought up the comparison to Gwen Stacy thing. That's like super depressing. Like, like you don't know that comics can get uber depressing. You know that's something I kind of had to learn as I got older. Being like, oh, I thought comics were just all funny. It's like, nah, some really dark stuff has happened in the comics. So you just don't get to see it in a lot of adaptions because they probably try to steer away from like, once again, like Jason Todd literally getting bashed in by a crowbar. It's like, yeah, you probably want to steer away from that, but this is the type of show you can lean into that. So regardless, tangents and everything again, but it is that thing of like, yeah, like going back to my point is like, yeah, Jason does kind of resent Robin because all future Robins are just, hey, you're just a replacement for Dick. I think that's what it comes down to. Like, that's all I am. Like, in Bruce's eyes, I'm just a replacement for you. I'm kind of like the pseudo son that walked away. Because even Scarecrow had bounced into that because he was like, oh, like, you're the prodigal son. Like, you're that, like, circus kid that Bruce took in for a PR move. But it's like, oh, went your own way and then came back, the prodigal son returns and everything. But yeah, he's the one that kind of pointed Dick in the right direction. So Titan's in town. It's like, right, we're going to work on this. I love the whole Corey going into Dick's room and seeing like that. What is, I can only assume, is kind of like a certificate / degree to an extent, like, oh, you know, I will not let blah 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 and fear like overtake me, or some like, I'm super paraphrasing, and it's just like, even Corey's like, Jesus, like camp cruel and unusual. It's like, oh man, it's like, the fact is that it's almost like a certificate, like, hey, good on you, Dick. You passed the Batman boot camp. And it's like, it's an official certificate. And the sad thing, he held on to it because it probably was an accomplishment, but it was legitimately like, I guess it was almost like a superhero contract is what it is. It's more so, it's a certificate, but more so like a superhero contract of like, oh, I won't let fear and stuff like that get to me. I'm like, that's so weird that you would do that. That's so weird. And then you have Corey going into another of her states, which I love. Like, at the same time, Gar's going through Batman's books and stuff like that, and then Connor's just eating food on top of his books. He's like, oh, you think Superman has that? It's like, oh, you still haven't met Superman in this continuity. Because I know that's a very contemporaneous relationship, depending on, like, if you go by the Young Justice, like, storyline of, like, the Connor and Clark thing, oh, it's super, like, I don't know that kid. Should we really be trusting that kid? Like, Bruce had to be the one, like, you need to calm down, Clark. Like, why are you treating this kid like this kid's kind of partially you? Like, you need to take a little responsibility for him, which I think is ironic under the circumstances currently with Bruce and complicated situation with his respective children. But you get what I'm saying. Like, it's just an interesting parallel to think about. It's like, oh, but he's like, yeah, I guess you still haven't had an opportunity to really meet and get to know Superman. You know just what other people have said and everything. So, but Corey ends up, after like her episode passes, like, you know, she calls up Justin asking for help about, like, what she's going through, which she's kind of saying, like, it's basically your subconscious saying, like, yeah, there's something not right here, which what it is, like I said, I don't know, but there's, like I said, whether it's something that's deep and dark, like from when she had lost her memories, and this is a memory that just never came back just because of the trauma of it, or is this something that's happened more recently that she's just blocked out, or someone's blocked it out for her. Either way, so that's something she's got to deal with. Instead of the whole, like, Justin being like, yeah, but even if you don't have another episode, you can always, you know, call me up. So we also have, you know, my question being like, oh, where's Hank and Don? And then like, oh, there they are. Hank in those freaking shorts, which I love. Dick was like, oh yeah, like, Don told me all about those shorts. He was like, oh, those are pursuit and attack shorts, motherfucker. And I'm like, I love it. It's so good. I love I like that Dave, like, mended their relationship, because, like, obviously Hank held a big grudge and very, like, bleh towards Dick, but, like, seeing that they're like, yo, bud, like, bro, what's up, like, that they're good, I think I really like that. But obviously they're in DC. I love that it's like, oh, Todd with 1D being like, yo, dude, so, like, what'd you do before this? And he's just kind of, it's like, what were you, like, narcotics, this, that? He's like, a little of everything. It's like, what'd you do before? He's like, I was kind of with a special unit of law enforcement. It's like, oh, Secret Service. And he basically broke it down like, I was Hulk. And it's like, all right, mystery man, you fine. He probably thought, like, because he was like, I wore like a white suit and red and like a particular helmet. He was literally putting it out there, but fine, keep your mysteries to yourself. But they still are working on a team, and it's just like where they currently stand. It's like, oh, we still kind of do our thing, and it's like, oh, do you want to go? She's like, oh, I've got a lunch. And he's like, oh, right, cool. You know, but I mean, glad to see we work together so well together. Always have, always will type of thing, you know. So, but him showing up at Gotham though wasn't exactly what she wanted. And him so casually dropping by, and he's like, yeah, he's like, you didn't tell me what you were doing. She's like, yeah, our whole thing was like, I'm gonna do my thing, you're gonna do your thing. So it's like, he's like, you, like, cause she's like, you decided you didn't want to suit up, and I was fine with that, but like, the fact is, I'm accepting the call, you didn't. He was like, it's not that simple. He's like, suiting up when not being together with you kind of sucked. And it's just kind of like, yeah, like, obviously he wasn't in a good place when he was kind of suiting up without you, so... It's just kind of like he's like, you're gonna Dove, I'm a Hulk. And she's like, all right, fine, whatever. And just, I love it, she's walking away, he's almost got that, yes, like, kind of celebratory thing going on. But obviously running the chess moves through the computer and everything, you find out, like, the moves or whatever, like, ends up, like, spelling out Robin, and it's like, oh, that's not... that can't be a coincidence. And you find out, it's like, oh, it's called the bird move, and then, like, all of a sudden, like, there's multiple, like, locations throughout Gotham that are based around birds, and it's like, oh wow, really on the nose. Which also I'm like, that's so weird because it's like that feels like such a Riddler thing to do, like hide stuff like in plain sight, kind of like that amongst like riddles and stuff. I'm like, I mean, maybe because we know about the Mad Hatter, like, because of last episode, but it's also like, you know, I guess you had to have crossed paths with the Riddler or something in this continuity, so maybe you bit a little out of his, like, textbook. But, they all divided and conquered trying to find, like, you know, the places that were, trying to find, like, the next victims, and they did find them, but, like, they're robbing a bank. And the Titans show up and ready to roll out, and, you know, Dick is the one telling, like, Barbara's like, no, let us handle this. Like, but Barbara's like, if things can go sideways, it can get super bloody. Which, to be fair, it didn't, but they still got away with, like, 25 million. That was a pretty interesting play, because I was like, they found the kids, I was like, but who else are they going to find? And then there's people back there, I was like, the parents, and it's like, yeah, those were criminals pretending. And it's like, yeah, calculated move. It's like one step ahead. Once again, no one died or really got massively hurt, I think, but it is just they got away with 25 million, so it makes them look bad. And Barbara's like, you were literally the only person that can talk me down, and I shouldn't have listened to you because Bruce wouldn't have gotten fooled. Like, that would have never been a Batman. Like, the whole point, the whole mission statement is be a better Batman. You ain't doing a good job so far, Dick. And he's just trying to apologize. And he's like, you know, I guess we do have to do the whole keeping it professional thing. And he's like, I'm sorry. I let you down, Commissioner Gordon. She's like, yeah. Like, the fact of the matter is, leave it up to the cops. We'll take things from here. Like, because this is our city to protect, not yours. I mean, it's like, because I think it's also the element of you abandoned the city. Yeah, you had to get away from Bruce and everything, but now you're only Bat because Bruce left the city in your hands and kind of told you, like, hey, run things. And it's like complicated trying to, you know, and obviously, you know, Dick is kind of feeling bad because it's like, right, like, I feel like I let Barbara down, like, you know, because even I love the whole bit about, like, oh yeah, this is something Gar made, and it's like, and Dick's like, isn't that for crypto? And just like Hank just not saying anything, just putting it back. But it's like, yeah, it is kind of weird. Your dad's like, oh, welcome home, son. When you invite your adult son back home to sleep in your bed and wear your slippers, it's pretty damn weird. And Dick's like, yeah, it kind of is. And so, you know, Hank being like, you know, when it's all said and done, whoever this guy is that's messing with, he's going to go down and we're going to be the ones to do it. So fucking chin up, amigo. And he's like, chin up. And I'm like, yeah, like the bro moments they're having is pretty legit. I like Hank, like, telling, you know, Dick, you know, keep his chin up. So, but I also appreciate that it's actually Gar who's the one that ended up figuring things out, because, like, obviously they're working the chess moves and everything. And he's trying to, like, it's like, okay, how do we handle this? And he's like, right, he found out about, like, Bobby Fischer removing his feelings because he thought, like, the feelings in his mouth, because it's like, right, he thought, like, the Russians were, like, listening in or something. And so it's like, right, referencing a particular move, it's a defensive move. And so we're able to kind of piece stuff together. Like, it is like some chessboard bird related stuff. I mean, well, this one just ended up being a chess thing because it ended up relating to a place that Dick had, like, Dick and Bruce had shut it down, like, some time ago, like some Hobbs place. And then hearing that the cops were on their way and it was a trap, they put down some spike strips to slow them down, and the rest of the team does their thing to kind of take them down. And I love, like, when that dude just runs into Connor and Connor just standing there kind of shrugging his shoulders, like, and you can just see him in the background kind of kicking the dude's feet, just like, oh, I'm trying to see if he's still alive or okay. So they do their thing. Don and Hank had their whole weird thing of, like, almost like, oh, we have these questions, you know, chicken or egg type of thing. And it's like, oh, we never get the answers or whatever. It's like them working together as a team and just, like, the complications that come with that. But then you have Dick going toe-to-toe with Red Hood. He's like, yeah, I'm going to be the one they turn to when you let them down. Pretty legit, like, close quarters combat situation. Also, like, Dick having to show off those, like, acrobatic moves, like flipping backwards and doing a cartwheel to get away from the bullets. Once again, it's just like, I thought it, because I brought that up before earlier this week about how, like, Stargirl has such a unique fighting style. I was like, right, can't forget that like Robin's like very acrobatic. You know, Dick in particular is like another very acrobatic like fighter. So like I was like, oh, I didn't let that slip. I was like, right, I didn't think about the fact is like, I'm granted she has the cosmic staff and that can do its own thing. So, but they have a very similar fighting style, and especially because he can like do the whole magnetic thing of like making him come back to him. So it's like, right, they do actually have a similar fighting style, and I never really thought about this specifically. I mean, I think it could apply to Robin as well, but I think he does it a lot more as Nightwing, like really brings out his acrobaticness. But they're going toe to toe, and Robin got the best of him and smashed open the mask. I was like, wait, is he gonna see? And it's Jason. I was like, yo. He said, like, Bruce always said you were better at the toys. And he was like, Jason? He's like, yeah, but I'm going by a different name now, Red Hood. I was like, yo. I wasn't expecting him to find out this early. Episode 2 of the season finding out about Jason? Because that's also part of me wondering, like, with all the other stuff going on, I kind of get the feeling like, I don't know if this is going to be like the main story this season, or is it going to be like the first half? Like, is it going to be like the back half is going to be a different story to a certain extent? I'm curious if that's going to be how this plays out, or whether the entire season is going to be a Gotham season. But yeah, finding out that for one, it's like, wait, Jason's this dude doing all this stuff, all the terrible, like kidnapping people, forcing their hands, using them like pawns. Also, you're killing, like wait, how, you're alive? Wait, you're a villain? Wait, what's going on? A lot of questions kind of running through his head. And like I said, I'm just as lost as Dick to a certain extent as well, because I am ignorant. I know that Jason, like I said, I knew Jason was Red Hood. I just didn't know like he was villainous at the beginning. Not unless that's something they're just doing for the show, but I'm assuming that's kind of I'm assuming that's going to be them being faithful to the storyline. Maybe they're going to do things differently. I'm not well versed enough in the storyline to know what they're doing differently, but I'm like, is that them like changing that a little bit, or did he start off a little villainous? I mean, maybe in his mind, it's like, I'm going to help this city in my own way. Like, they basically making the criminals work for him. It's like, I have to sacrifice some people here and there, but in the long run, it's going to be for the betterment of Gotham. I don't know. Like I said, diving into his reasonings, how he's alive. Like I said, you'd assume it has to have something to do with, like, what he was pumping before the Joker killed him, quote unquote killed him. So I was like, part of me is like, don't have anything to do with like the Ra's al Ghul, the whole like God, what is it? The Lazarus Pit. I was blinking on his name. I was like, I don't think it has anything to do with that. But it's like when you think of people coming back from the dead, it's like that's immediate. Which I'm like, is that going to be what Rachel does potentially with the whole Donna thing? Is she going to Lazarus Pit that? I'm like, I mean, we don't know like in this continuity whether they exist or not. We know like they get taken care of in the Arrowverse, but like I don't know in this like on this Earth like whether or not the Lazarus Pits are already an established thing or not. But and if they are, like whether they're already dealt with, or is that going to be something that comes into play this season? Ultimately have to wait and see. But like I said, it's surprised that Dick knows like this early on who's under that mask. And I was like, now that's going to add an element, especially for the Titans, who is like, right, we kind of let him down, and so now he's not just dead, he came back and now he's this. And it's like, maybe Dick's going to feel like even more of a failure. I mean, because he has to take over things too, because it's like, well, Bruce isn't here, so this falls on me more so than anyone else to kind of handle this. So obviously, like I said, there is a third episode coming out, so I'm very excited to kind of immediately jump into that afterwards. But I'm very excited to see what happens. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.